Greetings, and welcome to Beatles Stuffology, where two old friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Well, hello. How are you?
I am tickety-boo, I think. How are you?
Tickety boo. Good. I'm excited because we're going to be talking about a song today that um should bring a lot of pleasure to a lot of our listeners. But I'm also kind of disappointed because I don't know if you remember the last time we recorded, JG. I set you a few traps and you did not walk into them a single time. I referred to this song we're talking about today several times when we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about what goes on, and you do the editing. I'm sure you've listened back to it by now. There were several times when I referred to the song that follows this one, and I was hoping that you would say the name of the song, but you did not. Damn
No.
you. So
No,
what
well,
song are we? I'll do it.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
I'll
go on, you get
I'll
it out
do
of the
it.
way.
We're talking about the song "Girl," sung by John Lennon. It follows what goes on. It's a fun little ditty, and its title varies depending on how ingrained the rolling of the R's is into your accent.
Fairly, fairly ingrained. I was talking to my other half before we did this recording, and he mentioned that the fact that this is in fact a one-syllable word, despite the way that I pronounce it. So,
Is it?
yeah, well, I pronounce it Giddle, and you can pronounce it any way you like. It's not for me to say. But yeah, so that's what we're covering this episode, and it's a definite change of pace from what goes on, which is something of a relief. How do you find this one?
Well, a little bit of context. No, two, I think, well, one important thing to note, context, Beatles wise, one context for me, the Beatles context, last song recorded for the album. And maybe when we come on to talk about the album, we'll sort of have a look back over the last songs to be recorded for each of the albums up to this point and see if we can come to a conclusion about whether or not they might have been rushing things towards the end. There's certainly a suggestion here that they were rushing towards the end. But there's like an interesting little energy here. There's some schoolboy humour. There's a bit of fun to be had, and it's certainly different to anything that they'd done before. But from my context, I think when I was younger, I would get this mixed up with Michelle, a song that it's quite often linked to, and I think that's because listeners, you know what I'm like with lyrics. For some reason, when I was younger, the opening lines in my head were, this is where that speculation goes on, is anybody going to listen to my story all about the girl who came from France? I don't know why. I don't know why, but for years I was convinced that that was the lyric.
Okay, well, it's not, but that's fine.
No.
I think it's an entirely understandable mistake to make. And you know, this and Michelle are often referred to as the Euro songs. But this one is it's maybe less distinctly European than Michelle because Michelle is so French, whereas this is it's got that lovely tempo switch when we get to the middle eight, and it's really an effective little moment. But you know, if this was a rushed song, which you mentioned, it still feels like it's well put together. I mean, particularly compared to the sloppiness around what goes on, which was also recorded towards the end of the album. I mean, that's just tossed off. But there is a feeling here, I think, that a bit of care and effort has been put into the recording. I'm not going to say that it's 100% perfect, absolutely not. But there's a real sense that this has been properly constructed and like just simple things like having a capo high up on the guitar so it sounds a bit sort of Mediterranean or whatever because it gives a different timbre to the sound, like just things like that. It makes an impression, and it makes an impression because they've spent a bit of time and thought, well, what can we do, how can we can construct this atmosphere, how can we get this sort of sound put together. I think it's very effective. So if this is rushed towards the end, it's still pretty
I
effective
do
for all
like the fact they
that.
managed to make guitars sound a little bit unlike a guitar. Um, so there's
Mm.
there's there's something in that because you could sort of imagine that Greek feel to it. You could sort of imagine that perhaps there is perhaps some mandolin in there, or and they're plucking away a zither. Um, but they're apparently not. 2 years down the line, I think they probably would have had all manner of instruments in the studio. But here it's a case of, well, how can we make this guitar sound unlike a guitar? Here's an idea, and I'm all for that. I'm all for that little bit of invention, and whether that was because they were desperate to try and make it sound like something else, whether it's because I believe they may have been quite heavily stoned during the recording of this. Whether it
It's
was George
possible.
Martin deciding to kind of impose some of his musical knowledge on it. Maybe they were just they got lucky and they had a brilliant idea, and the arrogance of youth saw it through to the end. It doesn't really matter. It works in a way that is fun. I mean, okay, right. So let's kind of break it down. The invention in my mind is all in the musicality of it. I think lyrically it's pretty much bog standard. Woe is me kind of, oh, here's a woman, I love a woman, woman don't love me kind of thing. Yeah, it's I don't think there's much in there that we haven't heard before. Maybe there's a little bit in there where someone can then speculate, oh, is he talking about women? Oh, maybe he's taking on the behemoth that is religion. Okay. Um, but in general, lyrically, it's kind of meh. However, musically, it's so different. Sorry, were you gonna argue on the lyrical point?
I wasn't going to argue about the lyric, but I think I would maybe argue a little bit about the delivery, because I think one of the things that distinguishes this from a lot of Lennon's sort of earlier "woe is me," "oh that woman, she don't love me like I want" kind of songs, is that he is clearly having fun with this. He's not singing it straight. I don't think he's being particularly self-pitying about it. There is a slight tongue-in-cheek element to this. Now, the music definitely helps to back that up. That definitely reinforces it. But I don't think, for all that the lyric is familiar, I think the delivery is kind of what saves it. I think Lennon sings this well, quite high, I think, as well for him. But it's well sung, and I just think that the way he sings it rescues what otherwise could be a quite, yeah, sort of repetitive, "oh she don't love me" kind of song.
So I wonder then if that's a combination of the end of term feeling. School's out for the holidays after we've recorded this, so therefore, let's have a little bit of fun. We've come in our own clothes today, and we brought our own cigarettes in, so let's all be a little bit relaxed. Maybe he was extra relaxed because also of some sort of narcotic influence, Your Honor. But he certainly does sing this. He sounds less like he's got something stuck somewhere where it shouldn't be, as he can often sound in some of his earlier lyrics, where he really does sound, um, my view, of course, like he's got several bones to pick, even though lyrically he's quite annoyed with this girl. It doesn't sound it from the way he sings it.
No, but and I like that tension. I like the fact that this isn't just him sort of yeah, wailing on either her or himself. It's quite nice when he has the opportunity to do that. And I think if it is in the same ballpark lyrically as some of those earlier songs, uh, there's maybe just enough to kind of rescue it. That sort of third verse, the sort of when she told me she was young, that pain would lead to pleasure. Did she understand it when they said a man must break his back to earn his day of pleasure? Will she still believe it when he's dead? I think that's quite funny. And I think that's quite funny in the way that he sings it, especially will she still believe it when he's dead? And it's like boom, and it's I don't know, it makes me smile every time I hear it. And I don't know. I think it kind of gets away with it. It's actually this is a sort of minor interesting parallel with what goes on, because what goes on has got that all that sort of tides of time kind of thing, and it's kind of resting part of the lyric, and one of those I don't know, aphorisms or cliches or whatever you want to call it. But, pain would lead to pleasure, day of leisure, all this kind of stuff. But it's so much more effective here. And I think, again, it's partly more effective because Lennon is putting a sense of humor into it. He's not just singing it straight now, whether that's because he was stoned or not, or whether that's because he was just, that's how he viewed this lyric is up for speculation, shall we say. But it works.
Fair enough. And where do you stand on the intentionality, supposed intentionality of the debate around Catholic values that occur in that last verse?
It's bollocks. I don't think that's what he had in mind at all. You?
I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that a few writers have pointed it out, and bear in mind I was raised Catholic, I hadn't noticed it at all. Um, I think it's one of the handier phrases in there, so it appealed to me in that sense. But I can't honestly see that there's much in the way of serious theological debate going on there. But good effort for trying. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
after all,
if you
we know that he's not exactly the most theologically advanced character in the world. I
no, I
think
think
that
that's fair.
I think the interesting side of it is that we do know that they said, or at least Lennon talked about the fact it wasn't written about a specific incident or a specific person, whereas he would often say, perhaps even as little as 6 months, a year ago, 18 months ago, that he would be writing about things that weren't really working for him in his own relationship or the time he met X, Y, or Z. He said that he's talking about this kind of notional girl, this sort of fictional idea of an idealized version of what a woman should be. We choose to take that on board, then that's quite interesting that he's um, imagining this idealized person being one who puts you down and makes you feel a fool when your friends are around, which says perhaps something about um, the psychological traumas of the young John Lennon.
Hmm. I also think it's really interesting that he thinks that this is some kind of notional person and not somebody he actually knew or had an affair with or anything like that. And I think it's to the benefit of the song that that's the case. I like it when Lennon can write in slightly more abstracted terms. I think one of the reasons that I'm less of a fan of a lot of his solo material is because he ends up basically not writing about anything other than himself. And at a certain point, that can get a bit dreary. I want somebody who can sort of expand their view of the world or expand their emotional palette or horizons or whatever it is. And having had quite a few Lennon songs which are clearly either about what's been going on in his relationship or, yeah, like you say, people he's had an affair with or whatever, it's quite nice to come to a song where that's not the case, where he is writing in a slightly more abstracted sense. And I think it benefits the lyric because it lets his imagination take flight in a way that maybe we haven't had. Again, that sort of that pain would lead to pleasure, day of leisure kind of thing. We don't really get couplets like that in a lot of his more sort of either self-pitying songs or songs about how things have been going on, with whoever it is that he's been with. And that ability to write out with his own head, I think gives this lyric a slightly stronger edge to it. Now, I don't want to lean too heavily on that. It's not the best lyric he's ever written, but it's still a little bit of progress forward. So if it is that kind of character who he's just made up, some idealized woman, I think it's to the benefit of the song.
So just on that, it's worth acknowledging a couple of things. Firstly, yeah, pleasure, leisure, fantastic. But bear in mind that for the rest of the song, we get story and sorry, stay and day, her and her, cry and why, fool and cool, said and dead. It really stands out as the outlier in here. But also,
I like said and dead. I think that works really well. I think maybe it's that verse rather than the rest of the song.
fair
But yeah,
enough.
sorry, go on.
But you know, you've got rhymes in there that Noel Gallagher would be proud of. Otherwise, very much. So I think in the 1980 Playboy interview, Lennon in there talks about how he much preferred writing about himself, and that that it gave him essentially. I'm putting words into his mouth here. Sue me, John. Gave him a sort of an intentionality. It made the lyrics mean something to him, and that he didn't like writing songs that weren't about him, which is a real shame when you think of the genius of being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, for example, or the various aspects that he found for a day in the life. He could write really, really well about other things and taking his influence from elsewhere. And there is a large period in that Sergeant Pepper into the White Album era where he isn't really able to write a lyric unless it's found from somewhere and used. So, eh, what am I saying here? I don't know. Maybe don't believe everything John Lennon ever said about himself.
Well, that's good advice for any discussion by John Lennon. I think I'm correct in saying I can't remember if it's in the Playboy interview or not, but I think I'm correct in saying that it was one of Yoko Ono's kind of big artistic influences on him, that he should only really write about himself, and that the
Right.
artistry only really comes from himself. And I've got a lot of respect for Yoko. I'm certainly not going to put her down either as an artist or as John Lennon's partner, but I think if that is the influence, then that's unfortunate because yeah, I agree. There are so many good examples of Lennon being able to write creatively about things other than himself during that kind of. I mean, even if you want to take like 66 to 70 period, and it's a shame that that's something that he lost during his solo career.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think range is a good thing. There's today's controversial opinion.
Good. Yes. How do you feel? I'm just gonna do a crash zoom on this. How do you feel about the tempo shifts in this song? How do you feel about the musical side of it?
Well, okay, right. So long-term listeners will recall from the early days that there are two things that generally will appeal to me. One, of course, is a change of rhythm, a change of pace, and the other one are even momentary silences in songs. Now we don't get that in this, but we do get change in rhythm, and I like it. It works for me because it just brings something a little bit new. It's just another way of adding a little something else to the song, and I can almost imagine, um, with the middle eight in particular, it then just sort of leading to a change in the way that someone might dance to it. You can almost imagine the arms interlinked and the feet going out. Um, it works. I like it. It's fun.
Good. I like it as well. I also think it's fun. It's just yeah, it's really refreshing to have that. And again, particularly during sort of this phase of the album, we're getting all these kind of different styles, and we might not have had much to think about what goes on, but we've shifted from something French to something sort of country and western to something which is maybe a bit more Mediterranean here. Next song out, we're gonna have something which is maybe a little bit more sort of traditional, a bit more in line with the sort of folkier side of this album. And we're getting a lot of stylistic variety. But this is one of the few songs where that stylistic variety is actually embedded into the song rather than the songs that it's sequenced next to. And I love it. I think it's a really effective little thing. It's again, I don't know, it makes me smile. I don't want to say it's funny. That's not quite right, but it makes me smile. I enjoy it every time it comes up. And this is a short song. There's not a vast amount of length to this, so it's not something that we linger on. It's not a song which outstays its welcome. It's 2.5 minutes. So we've got this kind of cut back to the sort of two-step middle bit and then the rest of the and three verses, and that's your lot, and that's fine. It works really well within the context of the song, but it's not dragged out. And yeah, again, I find it, I don't want to say funny, but I just really enjoy it. It makes me smile.
So having said that John's singing is really good on this. See, I think one of the things that makes it is the backing vocals, and I'm not talking about their tit tit tit, but just in general that kind of Ah, ooh, oh, it just sort of fits the right turn, but also because the way the word girl gets elongated, not in a rolling R's way, but just in a kind of almost makes it sound like a sigh, an expression of feeling.
Yeah, I think wistful is the word I would use to describe the way that he sings "Girl." It's very very wistful, and those backing vocals they are kind of um are they schoolboy? I mean, obviously the tit is, and again, I know it's juvenile, but it does also make me smile. But I think the rest of them are they have that kind of yeah, almost like they're slightly sarcastically commenting on it. Ah, ooh, yee. And I like that as well. It's just terribly pleasing.
I remember I have memories of listening to various Muppet songs when I was a wee lad, and there was one that it now it seems like it's from the Mikado, but the Muppets did sing, which was Tick Willow, oh Willow, Tick Willow, and thinking that's really really funny. But I was about six, as
Yeah,
opposed to
that's
stoned.
well, both can be a reason to enjoy something.
Yeah, but that's yeah, so it just kind of reminded me when I was reading about that, because again, that hadn't occurred to me. I was just appreciating the song uh, for it being a song. But then we'd say, oh, they were giggling in the studio, going tit 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 tit. Oh, were they? Oh, okay, all right. Things you'd rather not find out about people, to be honest.
Fair enough.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. Bless. Still fun song, little bit different. I think it sort of shows them heading into new ideas and new territory, and basically saying, well, nothing's off the table.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair summation, and I'm not sure that I have much else to say about this one.
Well, I'm very pleased you noticed that I was attempting a summation there, because I'm all out.
Okay, good. Well, what do you want to give this one then?
Six.
Six.
You're going to go 6.5 now, aren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and not just because you said it. Yeah, I'm going to go 6.5. Okay, well, that's gutto, and hopefully that's the last time I'm going to have to say that word and be smirked at. Good. Let's leave it there. You can really get a hold of us. You can contact us by email. We are Beatles at gmail.com. We are on whatever is left of Twitter at Beatles_ology, and we are Beatles Stuffology on Instagram. You can also find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that more people can find the show. Next episode, I'm looking through you. But until then, keep listening.